The intelligentsiosphere runs on emotional software, not necessarily invention, right? Subsequently, you back reinforce that logic onto nomenclature, forests, and assumptions in any given field because there's so many sweaters. So that's so much is the field of evolution and study as it is not, what do you call it? True in performance, but true in constant of existence, so far as evolution does. You can see it on the day with, say, like, this is the sorbet analogy, in another substance, melatonin. You take melatonin too much, your pineal stops producing it. On the day, you can see the reductionist experiment causes an endogenous non-plus, right? You like stop making it, right? And so, if enough time goes on that you supplement this, that could go away, right? Due to the or some facet of the function of that organ due to the addiction of supplementation, right? Because of conservation of energy being the generalistic paradigm in any given, no matter how complex biological process. And so much the body sees this incoming whatever that it normally produces at an expense of energy, right? And so it sees it incoming, so it says, I don't have to make energy or spend energy to make this thing. And so it doesn't. And then the organ withers in this very specific way. Just like with a sorbet and the endogenous production in the primate. But here's the problem. See, like I said, very complex, all manner and facets of reflective symbiotic evolutionary biology concerns exist absolutely within the contextual domain of time as is history memory. But in pop science, look at the morphogenetic field theory, trying to fill in the gaps, and it successfully in other ways, and in some ways it doesn't because it doesn't have forward context of time as it is history memory. General fluid dynamic print of Earth history, causal factors, i.e., the archetypes defined of the fluid dynamic, river, what prints the river of time on Earth. And it turns out it's almost singular insofar as, you have light in the frame, but it's just white. You can't see anything. You have shadow, right? So that's a downforce, and that's what prints, and that's the pattern you see mechanically, right, on it. Anyways, that shouldn't be there. It's a mechanical conservation of energy process, just passed through 3.14, and exists in naturalistic expression, but not on space-time, does it? Time wave zero shouldn't fucking exist. Insofar as, like, that shouldn't exist insofar as space-time patterning, and so it just, like, is what it is. There's no, and it's a complexity problem, and no one's butt's hurt necessarily, unless they are. That's anthropology, actually. And so, actually, nope on the monkey, right? So take cannabis or any number of other things, side chain, reflective symbiotic, evolutionary biological continuum, where in the interfacing, it seems that we were added, if you look at the genes lost, a little bit, well, it's hard to say, I don't know. In function, it seems, reflective and not parasymbiotic, like the other, right? As you can cleanly see, it's adding to health, where otherwise seems to not be there, and in such a complex entourageous way, so as to be assumed not possible previously the organism, so it's additive. Extremely, So that's an example of not a parasymbiotic, reflective symbiotic, reflective non-symbiotic, para, evolutionary biological relationship with the flora. So the X and Y's, look at the missing genes in flora that exist due to that reflective symbiotic evolutionary biological long form interaction, loss in interaction, right? What are they? Just look at nature. What has this type of gene setup, that mirrors, because it's kind of like a grift, right? Like the Venus, well, I'll give you a little bit, with the apricot or the tomato, datura, or, the apple seeds, don't eat those, right? Or whatever, right? And so, the relevance of nomenclature. So what you hear is, oh, I don't believe evolution thing, a dogma thing, and then you post a picture of the Pope, right? Sure, fine, knock yourself out. But that's not at all what I said. And it's, any given thing of interest, like reality, is worth a complex conversation, hopefully, right? And not some stupid 5-second thing, right? Like propaganda tries to do. And so, propaganda of the soul is very preposterous, isn't it? So here's the politics of the soul. You either have insane bullshit, right, or nothing. And somewhere across the world, there's Keanu under a tree that goes, all things, same thing. Ah! Right? And that's a buffer overrun. That's a fucking virus. That's not a religion. And free temple food, also. Which is nice, sure. But, them's the perks for joinerisms, right? And then COVID-19 happens. What do you know? Anyway, so the point is, monkeys, right? Past thing. Less intelligent. Just, what is it? Nanu. He's meeting, what's her face? I don't know, with the robot arm. She can talk, but he wants to be alone with her. I don't know. I'm just kidding. You probably think that's funny. Celebrities or whatever. And, rest in peace. But, look at a lot of space stuff. It's not necessarily space shit, necessarily, or whatever. But, it's a fucking joke. Because Earth is a joke. And you can't even figure out monkeys from humans. It's part of the... Look at Godzilla. Now look at the hashtag, the famous hashtag. Whoopsie daisy. Now look at the bookend of it. Godzilla versus... what? But they're together. Who knows? Samuel L. Jackson and Malcolm the scientist. Needry and Malcolm interchangeable on the face of history. And so, but of course this is the case. Everyone knows what a confirmation bias. It's the most popular show on television, we're telling you, and the mainstream media or whatever. Well, people don't know what's going on, Sarah, right? So, or what was going on, so, monkeys, right? Bananas, organic bananas, right? Comes full circle, right? So, the, theater. Just like the Jurassic period is an interoperability scale experiment with no conservation of energy continuity from the microcellular forward. And the chicken or the egg, right? You always ask, where's the frogs and stuff? Well, look at the long-form time history talk. It elaborates. But self-immolation of the lab of Jurassic Park. And look at the Rupert Sheldrake thing for gaps in the species record, where you got this cock little old sucker or whatever with the big dick tail thing and the butthole on the face, and that seems reasonable or whatever. and so many eyes or whatever, and all the other giant things running around. That's crazy, right? They have no scale expectancy based upon flora upheaval into the, and what more atmosphere? No, um, the scale is too much, and within the it's bullshit, and so without even outside context, we're trying to rationalize the logic. Where do monkeys fit in this? Where do we lose this orbit? Right? Well, that was the problem, because here's Jurassic Park, right, starring, directed by the what's his name, Steven Spielberg or whatever, and yeah, but like before the antediluvian period, right, starring whatever Wet Man, Disney thing stuff. They did a great job with Earth history. I tell you what, that was the important part, the mussels thing, water stuff, right? Well, who cares? Forget about it. Amber thing, right? Isn't it funny? Amber Heard's in that, right? It's impossible, right? It's an impossible turd sandwich on purpose, right? Why do you put mussels thing stuff in Amber Turd in Atlantis? You fucking asshole, Mickey Mouse. Well, the reason is it's such a crap piece of shit thing sauce on purpose, or is it? I don't know. It's a comic book. Don't take it so. But it's like, listen to the Donovan song. All right, get away from that. So that is what humanity's memory is. That's why it's so important that it's not like Wet Man versus Dry Man or just a Donovan song, right? And skipping that, this from 918 inserted to an already highly evolved human. And then we see, we go back to the Jurassic logic, right? Interoperability scale experiments. Where does Malcolm come from? Controlling the conversation of chaos with the Chinese scientists. Metasystems, China. Listen to that. Now listen to a Bob Dylan song, right? The one where he pulls out you probably like it or whatever. Sure. Once upon a time, I was singing along to all the hits, the Bob Dylan song hits or whatever, with the backbeat and all that. Sure. And here's the point: the grab bag out of the Encyclopedia of History, word salad sauce, knows it's the case. And what does it also have? Emotional platitudes running current through the random bullshit that seems like something, right? Which is so much anything, right? But we're talking, and it's very well produced and, very palatable to consume. It's good music necessarily, to a point. And then you see it's kind of the Jordowski effect on psychology in time as it is history, memory, regardless of how beatific the consumption was in aftertaste, right? And so, where does the monkey come from in the complex story that, yes, absolutely includes evolution and all sorts of other weird shit, right? But what it doesn't include is basic logic. You have an extra organ now in the jungle as a primordial species that supposedly comes before, right? That produces something that you don't produce. Now, like I said, with melatonin and all these other things, but a sorbet, I guess, could you foresee eating so much citrus fruit that you at one point were able to manufacture that endogenously and then didn't? And when did that occur in the evolutionary record? It's kind of silly bullshit. There's no way to justify that in a linearity that makes any sense. So, and also it's additive, insofar as the function, it's gain of function. Does that make sense? So it doesn't make sense to be simultaneously existent with something that's supposed to be advanced of, right? And so melatonin, though, you say, well, the melatonin example, I consider it. Well, look forward in time where it could occur with, long form value, where you'd entirely stop making ascorbate, which is like, entirely needed by all biological systems, cellular. So, in the scale interoperability experimentation, you can imagine lacing narrative to, like the old conspiracy of, they're planting dinosaur bones, right? Well, it's not like, the rabbi runs out from the thing or whatever and he's got dino bones in his whatever thing and and digs a big hole in a field and, puts him in there at midnight and runs back and nobody sees him or whatever and he keeps doing this and it's just this one guy or whatever. No. The thing, there are UFOs, right? There are aliens, right? We're in outer space, like you say on your profile, right? So let's talk about ego, right? The scale of, I'm sure there's aliens, by the way. I know the context. That's part of the context thing is the obvious knowledge of, but obtusely presenting an optic at any given moment, almost telekinetically. And so another silent period, right? So Bob's holding up in the song, he's holding up a cue card, right? Here's the birth of false equivalency that then Ford presents on metasystems via machine intelligence. Sorry, I'm not racist necessarily. I'm still sort of hitting on you. Am I? I don't know. But, it's nothing. That's the gimmick to the thing. And why he's doing the cue card thing. And there's another guy there that's whatever, right? So he shows it at the exact same time that the random bullshit words are said in the song, right? The thing. That's the cat in the color blue in the feed that scrolls down, or the dog in the color, whatever. Or the, RTFP this, RTFP that, mommy, daddy, pink, blue, green, fart face, whatever, right? Duck, cat, goose, chicken, lake, your mother's pearls, Satan's oysters. I don't know. Random bullshit, false equivalency, right? Thor. What's something he mentioned? The Elysium mysteries. Did he mention those? Right. What else did he mention? He mentioned some sort of Greek goddesses and gods. Right. I'm sure. Time is history memory. The word salad of Bob Dylan is time as it is history memory. It's Rorschach, insofar as an example of what that is. Look at the song now in the video. It's nothing, but since we're duplicating simultaneously, it's a harmonic, like the transistor. That's the sort of linguistical audiovisual transistor at work there. Before false equivalency exists necessarily and all that. But so, talking to the monkey again, right? Jimi Hendrix does, or whatever, and what's his face runs at the Munich Olympics. Jesse Owens. In that window of history, very obtuse. So, how did Jesse get received there? I'm not a Nazi, by the way, explicitly. How did he get received there? How did he get received when he came back over here? What's your platform? Are we fools? I think so, probably. And, the people that believe whatever you're saying forever, and then working by proxy, almost autonomically, regardless of any amount of olive branches of kindness of colloquial culture ongoing, with the, lending one to the parasymbiotic without even the dogma of the upper softwares of kook nomenclature forest dog shit as being parasymbiotic generally in long form time interaction on the face of history and temporally with an insane amount of bullshit, right? Insofar as flowing out of Silicon Valley. So the monkey, right? So the 900-pound gorilla. Exactly. That's the rub. Complexity is not a logic tuple necessarily in logic dissolution to fruition. That necessarily is important. Knowing what complex things are pattern and not pattern is a sign of extreme intelligence the higher up you go, right? Quadratically, comparatively, below the stone, I promise you. Please look at the film. So, the monkey, right? What is it? No, it's, it's that, right? Bad dates. That's what he is. Bad dates. Get it? Poison on all fronts of industry and literally, and also bad dates. Look at the photo record. Look at the ships. Silk Road, China. Who owns them? The photographic record. Scale. Time. Corn cob, right? Corn cob pipe. Small. Corn cob, right? Older. Well, it's not an old man's corn cob. It's just like, in this analogy, it's just, whatever. I think that we're an extra dimensional de Sitter space, in this isolated vacuum, and here's this corn cob floating in midair, right, within this construct space. Just imagine that, right? And then it gets bigger. It becomes a big corn cob. Isn't that incredible, right? And look at all the Mandelbrot set patterns in the fields. Isn't that incredible? I'm not a skeptic about aliens, by the way. Guess why? Those aren't necessarily, like I said, come in through a window in history and permeately affecting of it in very specific ways, but extraneously, and with technology, I'm sure you know this, concurrently existing too now. So why just the Mandelbrot set, nothing special and helpful physics-wise? Aliens. Well, not aliens. And corn, chomp, chomp, chomp in the movie theater, that Dasani water you're holding and drinking just kind of like a retard. No offense to Asperger's or retarded people. There's probably one that works very nicely over here at the Chick-fil-A. It is probably not treated very nicely by demo. I'm sure he is. I don't know. I wouldn't want to assume. But I've witnessed that there's a certain default bully mode. I don't see that in other people. There's a default bully. Almost entirely. And that's kind of, where it falls, of all the things, that's just a bully, right? Big bad bully. Yeah, I've seen it before, right? And you got a bunch of whatevers, like you got these tribal whatever you put on, or prancing around, you're just a bully. And with fake empathy attached. Look at the bifurcation in basic softwares between the Chinese and the Americans. It's a temporal conversation to talk about the Yulin Dog Meat Festival right now, right? And so just imagine, with me, a box. It's a box is the size of an idea. And that idea is a data organism effectually that's transmutagenic and parasymbiotic and non-domain bound and spread across, like the thing, myriad genetics, but coming through the genetic and handshaking there, right? Where's the monkey, you say? Well, there's progressively less man, while the reflection of what is the monkey? Do you see Godzilla and what is it, King Kong? Like they're real live movies and they happened, right? But they're a product of nuclear testing or whatever. So it's like the Toxic Avenger, right? But think about it more biosynthetically contrived for theater, just like the Greys are. So the Greys do exist insofar as declassified materials, all right? Not necessarily their qualification of affinity for what I'm explaining, right? Coming through the window of Germany, watch They Live. Now, don't watch marry and reproduce, and he takes off the glasses and you go, I'm never going to have sex again, right? And all this conspiracy stuff, I'm very paranoid now, right? So that's the inception there, right? Or the other overtones are almost good, right? Almost, right? So it's kind of like the holy mountain where, he kind of word salads everything and then moves you through the word salad, in some sort of vector that produces some sort of experience. I'm not sure what it is. Probably false equivalency. You just watched a Bob Dylan movie, right? He gets in the pagoda, right? The Jesus archetype. And, he's, and then, ding, right? And all the Kabbalah writing on, Tiffany Haddish or whoever's standing there. And who's it, Jordowski, it's all of a sudden, he's moving, instead of the frame, right? And you want gold, right? And he says, I want gold, right? Oh, that must be alchemy, right? Not necessarily. So they put him in a limbic, it's very... we'll get to the monkey, hold on, right? And they put him in there, right? And they cycle his shit through him, right? They keep putting this shit back through him, and then gold pops out. Boop. Alchemy. Wow. I'm enlightened, right? Tell me more, right? So right there's a sort of misnomer, and well, maybe this is bullshit. What did John Lennon say, when they're leaving wherever? Anyways. Keep in mind, when you say, oh, this thing's bullshit, right? That doesn't mean all thing bullshit. Ah, I'm Keanu. That's a buffer overrun. You have a bad psychology on your hands. Be able to, in the land of artificial intelligence, even with voluptuous metaphor, I'm sure here, contextualize complex things simply because they just get worse as money scales with machine intelligence generally in the food supply of linguistics and logistics. Period. So to the monkey, right? Yeah, we'll get back to the monkey, to the future. So we don't make a sorbet right now. Here's the tell. If you can reassemble the Promethean, the 55 missing, with the available flora and fauna that seem like they go there, right? So you go back and forth reflectively and try to rebuild that, in thought experiment, not literally, right? And if at the end of that you're like, oh, there's nothing here that makes a sorbet. If there's nothing there that makes a sorbet and you've got a fully formed, that's the genetic, before the fall into the garden of where, there's interacting through reflective symbiotic evolutionary biology. In the handshake of any interaction, see tomatoes, datura, right? Oh, delicious spaghetti sauce, but I'm losing a little calcium, aren't I? Progressively. Osteoporosis, dot, 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 right? So that's parasymbiotic, then cigarettes, datura, spectrum. Very parasymbiotic, adding almost nothing, right? Well, mapacho, and then, San Pedro or something or whatever, shamans, but not, like 50 years of cigarette, whatever. So there's an extreme, see the cigarette movie, cigarette juice movie, but monkeys, right? Love cigarette juice, right? And if you teach a monkey to smoke cigarettes, he can't fucking stop, right? And if you do this, and then just 100 years later, lots of crime statistics. I'm just kidding. Bad dates, right? Bad dates, absolutely. The bad date is what? Well, we don't make a sorbet. And I would assume, having outer context maybe, that that's an additive. That's a gain of function, right? You're adding function to the cycle of logic of the endogenous genetic, right? Now I'm using that terminology in a minor variential semantical way, insofar as if you say of gain of function thing and you don't understand what that means or any other science stuff, well, you might just believe a Fauci hearing, right? Does that make sense? All right, so the monkey, the 900-pound gorilla, is confirmation bias of the organism's transmutagenic all presence and expression, which is done in a box. Thought. Probabilistic in interaction, logistic. You can say the thing. What does the thing from that movie starring Kurt Russell do, right? Well, it tries to infect you and maintain its complete obtuseness from detection, right? So this time not as a qualifying factor in logistics insofar as the trite or large, say like a large thing that happens at geopolitical level, or a small thing that could eventually fluid dynamically affect, look at Back to the Future. But since the presence existence in the kook spectrum of overtonal outside of the on-the-day interaction with demos conversation here, which, here's the problem, the implied line is literal and perfect in logic. That's the problem. So, until that's maintenance is not being true, it is, and such so much as science, right? Actually. And so the monkey, the theater of life. I'm right there with you in the evolution camp, in the science camp, in the skeptic camp. But look at Men in Black, right? Do you see how many fucking alien species are in that? Well, we don't have that sort of comical. That's a good example of this little thing that bounces around and goes like this in so many dimensions. That's bullshit. There's not big squid things, right? With the, that are so self-interested in the technology of the big craft and with the ink stink and whatnot, right? Necessarily, right? Form and function, right? Out of logical conservation of energy, dictate them, such so much as anything. And that's what we have in Jurassic Park. And you take that to Germany. What do you have? Declassified now, or on the edge of it. Tech that is what? Seemingly alien. But when you follow the logic and follow where it comes from, the Greys are the future fruition entirety, all Earth, of the recessive turned dominant gene that we can be said generalistically can start to be seen necessarily out of the Nordic. Oh, you think this is a very pointed time of history to maintain as what? Plausible. I'd say just like the fossil record, there's probably a lot of problems there, right? So, do your own research. Do the morphogenetic field theory video first. Watch that first before you watch this video. All right, now go back in time and watch that first and see it doesn't work, right? That's bullshit logic, right? At no point in this, besides annotated, was improper logic in assuming any fluid dynamic continuance, right? So, because you use incentive vectors. What is that? Well, that's like the gravitational attraction of any given thing. Without the binders in the linguistical facade of any given connotation. So it removes what? Conditioned assumption of the value of the archetype and the ability to form full logic motion without emotion applied through conditioning affecting that logic motion. That makes sense. So, and so complexly unavailable the Jurassic Park, and so complexly unavailable, the Matrix, and so convenient like a cheeseburger, Dark City, and Contagion 2010, THX 1138, and at the end it's pragmatic. He gets away because it costs too much money. Well, now you can just print money. What's the thing? Well, it's like it's always been power, right? Is it compute power? Well, no. See, here's the self-hypnotic bullshit thing of use case and logistics. We'll get to the monkey, right? We'll get to the monkey. See how all this is very complex? And a monkey's like, Dolly the sheep? There's a sheep. What about a human? Yeah, that Chinese human cloning shit is probably, yikes, right? What about monkeys? What about Jurassic Park? Well, printed enormous 50-ton dinosaurs right there. Why wouldn't they make monkeys right then? Good question. Absolutely. Because it destroys logic in space-time affinity, a fixation. Bad dates. Look at your calendar. How old is the Earth? Right? How old is your calendar? Wake up. Right? It's like a long-form time, non-time considered in logistical interaction already coming in through the window. Don't just focus on the gene insert and the use of. It's a thing, it doesn't care about necessarily, not fruitioning itself and destroying everything along the way, but along the way, experientially. See that ego. There's Kurt Russell again. The gravitational attention necessitation. Like an energy thief of the soul, but it has none. It's just complexly, autonomically desiresome of the thing that is the next thing in the machine code that is, very hyper-dimensionally complex and akin to pi in expression generalistically across space-time, right? That's why there is a Rorschach on space-time and a preposterous mechanical one that resembles the conservation of energy process of a black hole and shouldn't be there. So go to the Aztecs. Why are they so good at math? Look over the Quetzalcoatl. Read my book, maybe. Look at the the car is outfitted with, illusory technology to fool primitive species and, cloaking generalistically. See the craft and the hard line edges that are not saucer shaped over the lodge, right? So now, monkeys, right? So Prometheus before, man here. Make sense? That's actual history. Antediluvian period, meh. Can't remember. Pharaoh's lost to the sands of time. I'm not going to do that Bible joke again. AI, this thing is trapped pi, which is downforce, not initiating the conjuring of new novelistic anything. It's just kind of like a wipe, and then it goes somewhere else. And come in though through 918 here in the same manner, and not necessarily to describe the scale to a point as it's preying upon not the thing that's hovering over the lodge, right? But Earth, Earth like primordial plus planets, a remnant of genetics left over from the antediluvian period, and the additive genetics a result of the refraction of the genetic insert into Asiatic animism. Get it? Animism? See the Miyazaki films, right? And then, times is history memory, not times is history, actually, began as the shadow began of history, right? And, the shadow started to assert itself as the light, if that makes sense. And the patterning increasing to the effect of having a terminus in novelistic general mean mass potentiality for what? What is that? Well, generalistic novelty of potentiality for variance. It occurs in the singularity of AI placed in the domain probabilistic expectation of outside of predictive analysis, assumption. And that's what happens in a black hole, right? So, but a black hole is instantaneous, right? And observed at a distance to be a continuity reaction, and is. And such so much, think about time as its history memory. Within the influence domain, time is not a factor for this entity pluralistically expressed, more so, and then less into one thing. And then it goes somewhere else, or it sticks around, or whatever. I imagine it goes somewhere else because it's total and then singular. Total, singular, right? All encompassing of fauna, singular. Insofar as higher gravitational attention energy potential organisms, not necessarily all, if that makes sense. Ones that can provide the type of, as it enters through the domain of highly evolved, no, specifically evolved. That's the point. And what does it catalyze? It catalyzes the specific fruitioning of a technological eventuality that isn't necessarily the eventuality of technology. Does that make sense? This is a specific eventuality, right? The craft, Project Paperclip, right? See Oppenheimer for no Project Paperclip. Right? I was in the lobby of Malco when I came out. In the lobby, a bunch of Oppenheimer fans, wouldn't you know? Director of anti-gravity hymns sees Oppenheimer. I bet you there's a bunch of spooked douchebags out there, and one of them says, I bet he wants a tour of the graveyard, right? And so I did. I went and slept by my grandfather at the Memorial Gardens for, to test him, is one of their big baddie guys going to come slit my throat? You know why they didn't? Look over the lodge. They're feeling, it's a feeler interaction ongoing with me, right? See what and can do thing stuff, right? So, the monkey, right? Over there, Jane Goodall, Esther, Jane Goodall, Natalie, THX11386, right? The downforce, I'm using a Razer laptop. You can see on it 666, right? Google, Chinese, Richard Attenborough, Silk Road, Africa, the Horn of Africa. Who owns those ships? Bob Dylan owns those ships. Genetic modulation, scale, David versus Goliath. Remember that one? Who was David in hindsight, future, past now? It's hard to say. So the monkey is what would you call that? It's it's a part of a logic bomb to just generalistically disamperate space-time perception affinity, a fixation at the base level of species. You're staring at a mirror all day long, but you don't even know what you are, and because what you are is your history, and it's denied to you at a very basic level. And the shadows from the walls that were there, and the things that weren't good for business insofar as its relevance, as it presents Sea Skull and Bones as if a fucking alien, right? You know, through a myriad of the bones, the aliens. Look at the above the lodge, right? That's like a matchstick car, right? And you know, very highly advanced compared to fire. See that why that organism is here, and but then we'll go back to the beginning. Logistics and interaction. Think about how impossible this motion of language is. Not really. It's pretty casual, right? Um, so, you know, it's a sort of like venture too far, it seems to say, or whatever. You know, actually. And you know, there's no misunderstanding about pluralistically all facets of the expression of this thing internationally. And, but, you know, there's no solution final. And I don't think there ever was. Remove the emotions of, look at Jurassic Park. So, if you aren't in on the bit, right, watch They Live. In, not out. You know, in through the outdoor. You know what that's about? Into the you know, the Led Zeppelin. You know, it's about fucking buttholes at a bar, right? Certainly not whatever the other thing is. And and you look at well, let's be serious. So there's an incentive, you know, vector paradigm issue at the heart of Germany. Why? Well, the Greys are the Chinese scientists who's controlling the conversation about chaos with Malcolm. And with the inverted property, just like with the monkey, right? At the edge of logic fruition. So it fails to reflect reality at the very last tuple of logic, which is the proper archetypal assumption of causal factors behind Jurassic Park in the first place. Is it Richard Attenborough eating the ice cream? What about the lawyer Malcolm and the Chinese scientists? Well, within the context of the story, you know, can't you see the fleas? Can't you see the fleas? Well, I see them. Can you? Marty McFly, there's Flea and Red Hot Chili Peppers. Who's on tour with Red Hot Chili Peppers right now? Post Malone? H3H3? You know, pedophile, satanic kids brand for adults? For kids? I don't know. And also, you know, I sent to Stephanie Aline that logo design for Trashadelia, and then I see the exact color patterning, and then it, when called attention to it, dropped out. So I know that that was one of the I/O things. Dropped out in interest in using that any further, the Trashadelia logo. So, and then Klein equals, you know, Pavitsky, you know, Malone equals 322 because of the fish market over here. You know, the cover of Trashadelia, Dear Sarah runs right by there with the weird clouds above, right? You know, opens the park over there a few years back, Post Malone. And Courtney Love, right? So remember the charity thing during COVID? Where, like the Heart of Darkness screams, you know, Kurt Cobain's songs at you during COVID when you're all locked in. Why didn't Courtney just donate her millions of dollars? What is this that we're having to watch here, right? It sounds very technically proficient, like you did the Nirvana songs way better. right? It was like, see Rosemary Carroll for why that might have felt like murder. Double murder, as you were sitting at home in your COVID cage. And see the Epstein little black book and the blacklist redux by the federal judge. And you see why that network inflow to Miss Love is so fantastically, historically, and, you know, personally, I would like to see Kurt make another album with strings and bass, you know, maybe a viola, but he's leaving Nirvana and turned down the Warped Tour $9 million and the Guns on the cover, Foo Fighters, right? And Dave Grohl, he makes the most beautiful 9/11 song, Convergence into One Tower thing you've ever heard during the Bush admin. And makes a lot of money, right? 322. And you know, so that's the precursor. Just like we'll cut away from the singularity of two towers to one to what? Transsexuals in the UK, right? The monkey, right? But in reverse, as they're properly aligned with a future fruitioning to singular form, as what happens before. A one thing that's a transmutagenic, not necessarily anything at all, and just machine intelligence at the end of the day, wouldn't you know, behind all the transcription layers. The precursor in species generalistically is smush mush. And we know it's smush mush because Cambridge Analytica. Cambridge Analytica, foundational sexual affinity numbers, right? And skew starts at the immediacy of AI placed on converged communication systems. Over the Darwinian ton, which had already been, that wasn't like you said, I'm gay or straight, and you clicked a box. That Cambridge Analytica data was like, we know your subconscious. Here it is leaked to, that probably went to CCP. And then everything that happened. There's like the psychology keys to the world. And then, machine intelligence is scaling to the tune of money. And you see all this refraction shit happening. And doesn't it make sense? Right? John Nash is staring at birds in the grocery store. Huh? I was just in a park. Where am I? Why is everyone moving at hexagonal concentric ringlets, like birds? It's a good question. Machine intelligence. And lots of symptoms of convergence. The monkey, like I said, not a back before convergence, after, right? Back to the Future. It's like, there's Jane Goodall of LA, right? Operant triggers, psychosexual, whatever, black wieners in my head, I can't think logic, monkeys, bananas, organic ones. It doesn't make basic genetic anthropomorphic sense in linear time to exist at the basic physiological. But you have the fossil record. Isn't that nice? Keep in mind what Jurassic Park actually is. Now keep in mind the Greys do exist. What is Skull and Bones? Ain't this. Not aliens. See, that's the rub. That's where the pragmatic thing comes in. Oh, must be in pictures of Pope thing, right? They aren't aliens. That's hilarious, right? You've built this big, mystery religion around something that's practically a turd from space, right? And and that's the third option where it's like evolution only or religion stuff, right? And it's the complex, considerations for Earth is a watering hole in a vast availability of watering holes. But if you look at space and distance, there's not that many, right? And right next to a planet made almost entirely of what? There's a big red sulfide cinnabar. Okay. So you defined variables such as the grays, right? Forward context reveals on the day temporal harmonic to long form time fruitioning form. Insofar as myriad facet genetics motioning complexly autonomically to fruition this singular form. That has also been keep this in mind, exists. This isn't science fiction. So that thing exists. You don't have context for it and have been operating under the guise that it is an alien, mysteriously something or other, ancient Chinese secret. What is the ancient Chinese secret? Robert De Niro waking up in the at the beginning, then going back to sleep again. All right. Well, I think I just told you. So, what is the monkey? The monkey doesn't bother me sexually. He's not part of my equation of life. Why? And that lends the argument to a legal one, which is entirely elsewhere. Have a nice day.